This Future Construct podcast episode is supported by Applied Software. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and championing innovation with real-world expert consultants. So visit ASTI.com, it's ASTI.com, and please let them know that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Future Construct podcast special edition in partnership with Shadow Ventures and my fantastic co-host, KP Reddy. I am your other co-host, Amy Peck, and we have a great guest for us today. We have Roee Shua-Haim, I hope I got that right, who is the founder and CEO of Hathaware. Welcome, Roee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this morning.
So let's dive in. Let's hear about, first of all, how you came to meet KP.
So I met KP through, I guess, some of the mass emails that he sent out, and right away got my attention. So I thought it was a good mass email. I reached out immediately. Said I'd be interested, to potentially join the incubator or whatever other program you have in place for a company like Hathaware. And I believe a week or two later, we got on a call, and they were expecting, I believe, KP, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they were expecting a pitch deck and this whole, I didn't have a pitch deck. I didn't come ready with projections and numbers and all these things. Right away, I started off the call. I said, listen, I don't have a pitch deck. I don't have any pitch, but I have a product and I'll show you the product. And we dove right into the product. And I believe they liked it. They were impressed with the quality of the product. And that's how we met. And from then on, pretty much it's been, I believe, half a year now. So.
That's great. I think that makes sense. If the product can speak for itself, I guess let it. It's part of the lesson.
What's interesting, Amy, that's what I love about Roee and I have this thing, we Slack with each other 7:00 in the morning, every day. It's this thing, and one of the things I always use him as a benchmark to a lot of the startup founders out there. He absolutely focuses on what's most important, which is not necessarily, let me go to a pitch class. Let me do he focuses on two things: customers and building product. And there just aren't enough founders that do that. They're too worried about some BS at Techstars or whatever, right? I want to be in this, and they focus on all the wrong things. And so what I love about Roee, your story is just so fantastic about everything from your time in Israel. How do you think, give everyone a little bit of background on your time in Israel and how that's maybe shaped how you approach things?
It's shaped me as a person. So a little bit about myself, going more than a decade back. I was in the military. I was a commander, a paratrooper commander in the IDF. And by far the smallest physically, half the height of everyone there, but did end up being commander because it was just, I was focused on not giving up. I said, if this person can do it and this person can do it, I can do it. And I believe that mentality of, if anyone can do it, there's no reason why I can't do it. And that mentality really followed through and kind of guided me through school, which is, I studied in the Technion in Israel. That's engineering school in Israel. I started civil engineering. I struggled throughout school, but I kept on telling myself, if this person sitting next to me can do it, I can do it. There's no reason why I can't do it.
But to be clear, though, you jumped out of planes.
To be clear,
you trained very hard and competed to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. I'm just trying to make sure we understand this.
But not only me. That's the whole thing. It's
It's the whole thing.
yeah. But yeah, so by the way, also I went for some reason I chose probably the most difficult school in Israel to study engineering. Perfectly good schools in Tel Aviv and Beersheba, and in fact, my parents told me, "Don't go there. It's not for you. It's not for for people like you." That that at the time they saw me as not someone who was very, I would say, I don't want to say smart, but someone that really applied, a lot of their skill set to my education. Never was, not in high school, not anywhere else. And that's why I actually did find the Army very appealing to me at first and to stay there for a few years. But I wanted to, it was during the Army that I realized I loved real estate and construction. Leaving Tel Aviv, passing through Tel Aviv, and the buildings at the time were just going up at an extraordinary pace. The development in Israel was really something extraordinary, like a magic show. And I realized I was very intrigued by it, and that's what I wanted to study. I left the Army, and right away I started school. And like I said, the mentality of someone can do it, I can do it, really guided me through school. 1 semester, 2 semesters, all the way till I finished. Took me 5 years. And that's when I came to the US, really to New York City. Started working as an engineer and got into project management in real estate development. Until within the first 3 years, I was already managing over $50 million in construction and in ground up development projects. Up until today, I've managed over 85 million, and today I'm still managing projects and doing a lot of projects in New York City, Philadelphia, really the Northeast New York metropolitan area.
And Roee, you told me this great story about like you went to your boss and said, "Hey, we should buy software to manage projects." And
Right.
Your boss was like, "No."
Yeah. So this is where it really began. And again, staying to the mentality of anyone can do it, I can do it. This is really where Hathaware started. Just finished a project. We were going to start a new project. It was a $29 million project, around there. And that was my first project that I was managing as the project manager. That was my project. And I said, okay, I have Excel, I have emails, RFIs going all over the place, submittals all over the place, change orders. I was like, this is crazy. Needed software. Now I knew of Procore. I went, I had a demo with them, invited my boss. We all loved it. And we said, let's do it. This is going to be great. This is going to take us to the next level. Everyone was ecstatic, especially me. And then they sent us an invoice, annual commitment upfront, around $30,000 a year. And my boss looked at me and said, you're sticking to your Excel, you're sticking to your emails, because we're not paying that. And that's what I did. But I also, at that point in time, realized that there was kind of a void in the market, for really tools that are essentially what you need to take it from point A to point B in a project, right? Procore came with a lot, and a lot of the other tools out there really came with so much extra tools that really inflated the price and made it not affordable for a mid-sized firm like ours. So I did realize that at that point in time, there was a void in that industry, a place for another company to come in and provide, not call it a basic tool, but tool that really is what you need to build a project and to take the project from A to Z. And again, I said, if they can program it, I can program it. And then I started to learn how to program while really developing the software, and late nights, really, really, really early mornings. And more than 3.5 years later, it's here. So
Amy, this is what I think is really cool. So his boss says no. Most of us would just quit the job or find another product. He decides, oh no, like there should be something better. But it's funny, I don't know how to code. So I'm going to go spend the next 1.5 years learning how to code, because that seems to be the easiest path forward.
Well, and again, you pointed out, though, he does jump out of perfectly good aircraft. So, the bar of what, most people are afraid of is extremely high for you, Roee. I think that's where it is. But I have to say that in everything you have said so far, I think we should make this required listening for every single startup on the planet, because so much of everything that you've both articulated in this short period are such core elements of what makes a good entrepreneur. And so I'm really pleased, but I think we should put some snippets out there, and we should, get founders listening to, what it takes. And there's some fearless component, but there's also a focus component, which I think, to your point, KP, I think a lot of founders do miss. So you're here, you've created this software, you're in the accelerator program now, and you did mention Procore, which seems like a pretty good company to have in your sights. And look, I think it's not really about competition. It's about finding your your path in the market. I mean, I wouldn't even say you're in your early days probably not taking away business from Procore, because those companies aren't going to pay for Procore. So, where do you see the evolution of what you're building, and then some of the opportunities for mid-sized companies to bring technology in and improve their processes?
So it's a very good point that you brought up. I also don't necessarily, especially at this point in the stage of the startup of the company, I don't see it as I'm a competitor of Procore today, right? I'm providing a different product, right? Hathaware is a different product, and a very simple way to look at it, and I do bring this example a lot, is because especially when I was looking for a product, and I know when a lot of other companies are looking for products, they feel like all these products are very luxurious and very expensive. So the way I like to explain it is, you can look at these existing companies out there. We have an industry with project management software, and the project management software, if you look at them at vehicles, we have a lot of Ferraris, we have a lot of Porsches, a lot of, expensive, luxurious, really extraordinary products out there, but not many Toyotas, not many vehicles that, I just want to go to the supermarket. I just want to take me from point A to point B. I don't need something, so crazy, so out of the ordinary, to take courses really to be certified, software user, things like that. So I do see Hathaware fitting into the market as kind of the Toyota in the industry, where, Toyota's got a very big market, right? It's a different market than Ferrari, right? And essentially it doesn't conflict. You can have a Ferrari and you can have a Toyota, right? There's two different purposes for the vehicles. Someone doing a $600-700 million job can use Procore, but if they have a $20 million, $30 million job, we say, I don't need to onboard a project of this size on a program like Procore. We could use something like Hathaware. So it could really be, integrated or used in parallel with other products out there.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think you touched on another thing that I think is, can often be a trap that founders fall into, is just too many bells and whistles, and trying to make things too fancy and too feature rich, because it's a programming challenge to do so. But that's not necessarily what your customer wants. And KP mentioned at the beginning that you're focused on your customer. So are you talking, you're effectively, a customer yourself, right? Because you're using the product. But when you're talking to customers, what are some of the things that you're hearing from them that are really informing, how you're building out Hathaware?
So from about 8 months ago, we really started to bring onboard clients to where the product is today. It is not going to say completely different, but it's very different. I communicate with the clients almost on a daily basis. I have an open line of communication with all the clients, even the design teams, the architects, the engineers, the developers, not only the contractors and developers that actually hold the license to the software. I reach out to the architects. How would you like to improve it? And they always give me different features than the GC or the developer would. And really a lot of the goal here is to provide a product that doesn't really need, a user doesn't really need any onboarding help, any help to really understand, something intuitive, really easy to use. And we've been able to actually see that quite recently. As I recently told KP, we got a completely organic client, zero communication, and that client's already issued more than 50 submittals, RFIs, architects, engineers. There was no communication there, zero help onboarding. I just sent an email. Hey, saw that you signed up. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And said, thank you, great program, and continue to use it with no onboarding, which is very important because that also really doesn't exist in these types of softwares and in these industries. A lot of B2B products, there's a lot of onboarding and things like that.
Oh no, and the complexity just, it seems insurmountable when you think about the workforce that's out of that, just out there in the world. There's a pretty broad swath of people who have varying degrees of technical chops, and so I agree with you. I think simpler is better. And so as you're going to market more, what are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of scale and the problems that you're solving? It sounds like you're already getting your roadmap from your customers, which of course is the only place anyone should be getting it. But again, project yourself in, 2 or 3 years from now, and where do you see Hathaware kind of fitting into the marketplace?
So it's a great question. And the way I do see it really developing, or how I see the product developing into in like 2-3 years, is kind of reverse engineering of the products that are out there, where you go and get a product off the shelf, right? Like whatever's out there, you're getting it with all the bells and whistles. You cannot remove it. So again, going back to the vehicle example, the vision here is really to give you a vehicle and then not fully loaded. You could add all these other things that you would like to add, kind of customize your integrations and things like that. I don't need right away tools that are integrated with everything out there. They're heavy, they're expensive, and essentially most people don't even use most of the products. And that's what I hear from a lot of the clients is I said 90% of what you use with Procore or whatever smart sheets it's here. So that's really it. Really giving some base price, and you want more? Here's integration for this. Bring it in. Here's all these other things. So that's
That makes
really
sense.
the vision.
Yeah. And I think you have to name, your top tier package, Parachute. As just a reference back to your early days, your fearless early days.
Not a bad name.
Amy, I'm gonna tell you,
these early days. Sorry, Gaby, what were you gonna say?
I'll tell you, Amy. Everybody should keep track of Roee. Like when we talk about jumping out of planes and taking on an industry that just doesn't want to change, check back in 5 years if he'll return your phone call, because he probably won't. He's gonna be too busy for that. So he's out there crushing it, and couldn't be more proud to be associated with him.
I appreciate that. I'll always pick up your phone call, KP. Don't
worry.
There
you go. I believe that. So we're going to take a quick break here from our sponsors, and we will be right back. This episode of the Future Construct podcast is supported by the amazing team at Applied Software. They have solutions for any modern project. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and being the champions of innovation with their real-world expert consultants. They have a comprehensive suite of solutions for AEC, MEP, and manufacturing, and they have a singular focus to help you achieve higher performance. They have software, training, support, consulting, and custom development. Applied Software has you absolutely covered for all of your workflow needs. And BIM Designs is proud to be a client and partner of Applied Software. So visit ASTI.com, that is ASTI.com, and please let them know that Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Welcome back to Future Construct with Shadow Ventures, and we are here with Roee from Hathaware. So, you're talking to a lot of customers. Are there others, kind of in your realm now that are besides KP who are really influential, who are, helping you as a founder, or, helping kind of inform the product?
Yeah, so really, aside from Shadow and KP, who have been a significant help, and not only in all these things have given me confidence, right? That it's a big part of it. There is Thai from Hensel Phelps, who I've communicated with on a weekly basis for about more than a month now, going back really early to summer. But he's been a lot of help, and again, given me a lot of confidence to really continue and go out there and present it to larger and larger companies. And I take a lot of feedback from Thai and his team, and not only the feedback, but they've also, I think, not knowingly given me direction in who the actual target market is, and where do I want to take this company. And I think that's a very important part of how Thai and his team were able to help me.
Now, admittedly, that was entirely a trick question. And so without further ado, KP, can you do the honors, please?
Yeah, it just so happens we have Thai Nguyen with Hensel Phelps with us.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Welcome, Thai.
Thank you. Well, appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. We don't see, oh, there you are.
There you are.
And we're off. So I think while we have the option of having both of you here, if you'd like to tell a little bit about how you and Roee first met, and how that relationship has evolved, and then we're going to kick Roee out, and we're going to talk more about him.
No, that's great. My favorite part about what I do is really meeting fantastic people, and starting with KP. I think once I met KP last year, it's my optics have grown. The network has just I think exploded, and one of the advantages was meeting people like Roee, right? He's been fantastic to kind of get to know, and the energy behind what he does is amazing. I think a lot of technologies that I look at, there's so many, but I think a lot of it is the people behind the technologies. And I think similar to what KP resonated earlier, it's I think his passion and his drive, and his I think his desire to make a better workplace has been a fantastic thing to see.
No, I love that. And as KP mentioned, you are very generous with your time with founders. So I applaud you for that, because that doesn't always happen with large companies.
No, and I think when I first met Roee, it was very, I think, oh wow, it's another project management solution. But I think as we start to talk to him, understand really what was behind it, beyond the picks and clicks, it started to resonate that this is something unique here. Although I think within Hensel Phelps, I think we're a larger company, and sometimes I feel that we've lost some of the agility because of the growth that we've had with repositioning when it comes to solutions and finding those right solutions, because of of our ERPs in place and just the complexity that comes with that, and securities and different clients. I think looking at Hathaware was refreshing to see that there was a product out there that was real simple in approach, right? But then really solved a lot of the problems that we all face today. So I almost wish sometimes I could go back in time and met Hathaware, this product, like, at our, the timing in when we needed to find a solution like this. So, but that's really where I got really interested in the Hathaware product, and obviously Roee behind it, and trying to help my best to kind of figure out what is that sweet spot for Hathaware. And it may not be for a $1 billion company, but there's a lot of potential, I think, for the right fit in the multi-million-dollar companies, right? So again, just trying to figure out what that means. Not to say that Hathaware doesn't become a $1 billion solution, right? But I think that's kind of where we're at today.
Yeah, and not every company has to become a $1 billion company. That a several $100 million company is a pretty nice company. We should be very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I think, in my career path, it's been amazing. I think, like a little background on myself. Again, academically from architecture, and I think unlike most people, I had my midlife crisis in my 20s, right? I had to do some soul searching. So got out architecture, started to kind of dabble in different industries, worked in telecom for a while, worked for a long time for the North Face, right? Testing product and running warranty. Really got to love the outdoor space. And then as I was approaching my 30s, needing to kind of get grounded again with really where do I want to be when I grow up. And so, pivoting to from all those different backgrounds, I went and got a job with Hensel Phelps as a field engineer in a very small project up in Fort Collins, Colorado, 15 years ago. And I think through the transition and seeing kind of technology come into the construction space, I was kind of put front and center for Hensel Phelps to kind of take on BIM, what was known back then, and really to understand, how we can build better, and I think leverage on technology to do so. And so with that transition, 15 years, Phelps is to really enabling them and creating efficiencies in all we do, and ultimately delivering a schedule and cost. 8 districts with 2 that's a southeast, and then as far out as Oahu on the Pacific Islands. And so within that, we catered to a lot of different clients. Our biggest, I think it seems like every job, every district has a aviation project. We are the largest aviation client. We're a builder. Within that, we do a lot of hospitality, a lot of healthcare, a lot of critical missions. So a very diverse portfolio. And I think we're always willing to roll up our sleeves to take on the new initiatives. Kind of front and center of what I'm doing today for Hensel Phelps is again into a new role that really is going to be focusing on emerging technologies, helping companies like Hathaware, and again trying to position Hensel Phelps in the best way we can to meet the cadence of the needs of the job site, but then bring innovation into the job sites as well.
I think, you mentioned some of the unique challenges of bringing in new software into a large company. There's, a lot of legacy systems, but again, it seems very clear that Hensel Phelps, just by virtue of the fact, that you're there with this innovation role, are motivated for this. So is, part of the job just understanding, like, how are we going to be able to bring new technology in, and what systems do we need to, either alter or change to be able to allow all of this new technology?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Amy. I think a part of this too is really staying connected to the needs of the job sites. And I think that's where I truly feel that I help groups like Hathaware, Roee, just because they come up with a great product, but I think at Hensel Phelps, our ability to expose these products to our people and our owners and projects is really a tremendous thing, right? I think I almost I think at many times ask Roee to come to the job site, hang out with me for a week at the job site, and just understand that the one functionality that you think may be trivial in development may be something that individual at the job site hits 100 times a day, and it's not trivial, right? So getting that connection there is important. And then really to answer your question, yes, navigating through the complexities today, it could be a great point solution, but is it cost effective? Is it sustainable? Elephant in the room is, is it going to get acquired in 2 months, right? So within that, as I'm positioning technology and emerging technologies, it's really looking at cost, sustainability. Can I scale it? Is this something my people want to get behind? Because honestly, it's not me telling them to use this product. They've got to touch, feel it, and feel, they want to invest sweat equity into making it better as well.
Yeah. Ty, funny enough, this morning, Microsoft announced they're buying Activision, right? So the
really? Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Right. The 6-headed monster just got bigger, right?
Yeah.
And what I see in AEC technology right now reminds me of, there was a Time magazine article with Bill Gates on the cover in the 90s with him being a cyborg. And it said, "You will be assimilated." And it was a point in time where Microsoft was everything. We didn't even know anything other than Windows. There were a few of us goofing around in Unix or whatever, or Linux, but generally speaking, corporate America was 100% Microsoft, and that's where it was. And there was a lot of discontent, right? Oh my God, every time I get a new product, it's buggy. Everybody was just always upset with Microsoft, but you had no choice. that same visceral feeling I had in the 90s, am starting to feel with the incumbent software companies in our space. Like they're not being challenged, or to your point, they get acquired. And it's not like they do anything to make them better. In fact, they maybe hold them back. I mean, is that just something I'm seeing, or is it just me being like, me and wanting to challenge everything? Or are you seeing that too? Are you seeing that like part of what's going on is like everybody wants to meet with startups because they're just a little bit not thrilled about the incumbent software companies?
KP, you're absolutely right. I think that is the rhythm of what I'm seeing as well. And I think as Hensel Phelps, and again, being very cost conscious, we are a employee-owned company. So I think every dollar that I do spend, it makes a difference for me, and seeing what you're communicating there is absolutely true. I think in the incumbent software groups that I work with, I think very, little do they listen. I think they position themselves in a way that, KP, to your point, it's our way, or you don't have another solution. So I hate that approach. I hate being backed into a corner, and I think that's a lot of why I love partnering with groups like Hathaware, right? To kind of root for the underdog to a certain degree, but then to give the industry options, right? Which for me, I think that's the ideal state, is to have options. And I think with some of these incumbent groups, they're steering us in a way that we are having very little opportunity to look at options when it comes to whether it's coordination or just even authoring. It's, I think when, the other side of it too, KP, is I think it's very dangerous when I think owners are starting to be prescriptive in terms of what we should use at a job site, and so that causes complexities in itself, because, as a group, if I'm using a certain solution to manage a project, and also I get into an environment where, my goodness, the owner's prescribing this, we're using this, it causes redundancies, it causes double clicking, it causes inefficiencies. And I feel really bad for the trade partners, right? Because there are multiple projects. So they're not only having to see that waterfall effect from, owners to GC, but then now they're having to work with, those complexities as well in their own environment. So the waterfall effect, I think, is dangerous, and it causes a lot of inefficiencies. And again, what I'm seeing with the incumbents is, again, they're trying to make it less and less, I think, open to sharing and crossing data across different data sets, and that's the value, I think, is in the transparency of how we use data. And I think with some of these approaches, it makes it hard to do so.
Do you think it's just us that see this, or I mean, you have peer group. I know you've been in the industry for a while, and all you guys talk, right? Are we the outliers that are like, I don't know what they're doing? Like, or
no, not at all. It's I think with every conversation I have, that's always front and center. What is your tech stack, and how are you guys approaching this, and how are you approaching it from a cost standpoint? How are you looking at it for sustainability and growth? And it almost seems to me a lot of times that, with some of the incumbents, you use their product well, right? Which you should, right? But the reward is really this amazing escalation in cost that doesn't make it cost effective or sustainable to a certain degree, right? So, it puts everyone in a really bad spot. And I understand. I think with the incumbents, they need to make and generate profit, but I think with that, they need to be partners as well, right? And really willing to work with you, not only from a development standpoint, but also something that's manageable from a cost perspective as well.
Yeah. How much are you focused on just, emerging tech in general, and even some of the improvements in network architecture, in 5G, hybrid clouds, edge compute? Like, what are some of those? I mean, are you sort of looking at that in sort of a kind of macro and micro level?
No, Amy, absolutely. I think in what I support for Hensel Phelps, again, the diversity, it starts as early as project development, right? Looking at technologies that help us to simulate and put packages together to chase, potential investments. So you're looking at, from demographic data to, like trends as early on as that, and understanding also the supply chain as well. As we start to head into some of these things, and within that, through the meat of construction, we're always looking for solutions to make us or give us better information to turn around answers that we need to deliver at the job site at that pace. So we're looking at robotics, we're looking at hardware, we're looking at sustainability as equipment as hardware as a solution versus buying it and then depreciating it after 3 years. So every little bit, we're turning over every little thing to look at how hardware affects us, down to tracking at the job sites, right? That's something that's very important to us. So we're partnering with not only hardware companies but software companies, and then within that, how we turn the jobs over at the end of the day, right? I think a lot of owners are driving towards managing their facilities in a much better way than they are today. And so we're having to partner the back end with equipment manufacturers that we can get readings off the machines that allow us to better manage those assets, all the way to work tickets. So yeah, the full cycle of from project development through the life cycle of managing a facility and working with partners, whether it's hardware or software, and really at the end of the day, partnering with our owners, because if we understand the way that we need to hand the job over, and it's cleaner, it's more digital, less of those boxes of paper that we typically deliver, and those boxes end up in some Connex box that no one knows about, and so they don't know if their equipment is under warranty or not, right? So that whole thing for me and Hensel Phelps has been a tremendous focus. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, definitely.
Ty, you think, you guys, Hensel Phelps, you're top ENR firm, someone in your role, like, how does like a smaller firm look at the pattern of what the larger firms are doing? Because I talk to a lot of them, the mid-size, the smaller firms are like, KP, we just figured out BIM kind of like this year. And you're talking about all this other stuff that we need to be thinking about. How do you, I feel like some of the smaller, there's like a mentoring that happens with the larger firms to the mid-size and then even your subs and all, right? And I think a lot of these folks, everybody's just so busy. And is there any advice you would give to a CEO of a construction company, like how to think about investing time, money, and more so like mind share around innovation and this kind of stuff?
No, great question, KP. And God, if I could do it all over again, right? I think the key for me would be to focus on the workflow, right? I think often we are just so reactive about we're having to solve for that particular week or day, right? And they're trying to find a solution for that. Not being strategic about really mind mapping this whole thing from beginning to end. I think as you are bringing in solutions, how does it work with your current environment? It's solving this problem, but then you've got this other solution that potentially does this. And so where we are today with a lot of the larger firms is we lost the ability to be agile, right? Although we get in these contracts and then we get deployment, because when we deploy these technologies, there's a lot of cost behind training, right? And getting people on board and just getting it standardized. And so within all that, the complexities that really, for larger companies, you have less opportunity to really streamline your processes because of the complexities that way. So if I could do it all over again, I think I would have focused more on really the workflow and not any single component, and really strategizing about within that workflow of how do I get, for instance, we do a lot of virtual coordination, right? And that's where the industry is today. And it's taken some time to get there, where we virtually prototype. What a great concept, right? And then everyone agrees to where they install, and then we, prefab, and that whole thing just resonates, and it's a great concept. But the reality is today is a lot of times it stops there and it doesn't get into the field, right? And so in the solutions that you should choose is really ones that really support not only office but field, when that transition is much cleaner. So after, let's say for instance, after we virtually prototype and everyone's prefabbing, that same solution or that same data makes it into the field, and the field staff are using that same virtual content to understand layout, understand whether it's installed and installed right or wrong, right? And to get ahead of just the reaction, because by the time I know something's installed wrong, the reality is they're never going to rip it out because of schedule, and you're just going to compound on it, right? So being more proactive up front with technologies that give you those early indicators, I think, is another piece of advice I would instill.
Yeah. Do you agree? So I give a lot of talks and on. I keep talking to people about your CIO and your CTO are just two absolutely different functions, whether by position or thinking. And so many CEOs, especially in our industry, really don't know the difference. They're like, oh, that's the person that does our computer stuff. So because they do our IT network, they should also be our innovation stuff, right? And it's kind of like, and I've seen this pattern of talent coming out of the BIM side of the world, kind of leading innovation. And my view of that is like, that's the right move, because like you said, you started 15 years ago. You're comfortable being on a job site. You know how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Yeah.
And maybe an IT manager, like they're too busy worrying about printing and emails and Zoom, like all those tactical things. Have you seen a shift in that? Because like the idea of a chief innovation officer or a CTO, it's pretty foreign to our industry.
Absolutely, especially within the construction space or the build space. But it's real, and in KP, you're absolutely right. I think there's areas of focus. And I think as the CIO or chief information officer, it's infrastructure, right? It's everything that you communicated there, KP. And it's, they literally don't have the time to understand really, unless they grew up on the job site, to understand the why behind what we do, and I think a lot of times that's important, is that context, and so you're absolutely right. I think with VDC and how it's the evolution of VDC, it started out as BIM, right? And then it just got to the point where it was VDC, where, wow, it does more than just the virtual content or the virtual model. I think everything my group supports today, again, is from project development through owner turnover. There's many things that we support that is not even a model associated with it, right? And a lot of times they're like, why is a VDC resource in here? But to KP's point, it is because I almost call us, for a long time, KP, we were almost considered IT light, right? Because really, when a job site needed to really source a new solution, bring a new technology in, it wasn't really IT's place to be deploying it, because again, it's more than just a technology. It's really understanding the people and learning how to teach them and enable them to use this technology, right? And so, to your point, that's been the evolution of VDC, where a lot of my peers around the country today, they are getting into that CIO position, the CTO, and leading the innovation charge for their companies, because they not only understand technology, but they understand their people, which I think is a prerequisite for anyone that needs to get in that role, because they get the context of the why.
Yeah. How has it mattered to your owners, to your customer, right? A lot of these tech companies like Roee or any of our other companies you've met, you're the customer, right? The GC is the customer. And sometimes they forget, like, you have a customer too, right? You have a customer called an owner or developer. And sometimes they have, for good reasons of focus, they have blinders on. How are you seeing like owners and developers like engaging with you on these conversations? Or are they just like, hey, build our building, build it as cheap as you can, as fast as you can. We don't want to talk. Like, or are they actually engaging?
They are honestly, they're getting very progressive, right, in understanding what they're getting at the end of the day in terms of digital assets, right? So they're very proactive in that, and yeah, they're very intrigued. I moved into Arizona in 2012, and it was to support the largest project that we've ever had, one of the largest projects. It was for a large semiconductor group. And so within that, I still stay in this cadence with them 9 years into meeting them, in 2012, where we meet on a monthly basis. And we talk about innovation and technology and, specific to their needs, how does some of this stuff help them, from everything from supply chain to, again, as building to how we turn over the building at the end of the day. So yes, I think our clients, to answer your question, KP, are getting very engaged, very proactive. I worked with Microsoft not too long ago, and helping them understand how to better leverage the HoloLens for construction. So it's a funny story. One of the gentlemen that used to work for my team actually developed one of their first apps that allowed us to take technology or virtual content into the HoloLens and use it in the field to understand installation design and install validation, right? So yes, these owners more and more are definitely wanting to get involved in a better understanding of how technology helps the construction aspect of what they do.
Is it factoring into any of these like net zero sustainability goals? Like, is it factoring into some of the things that are just so important to owners these days, like large owners? Is it factoring into that?
Yes, and I think it's for a long time it was very fashionable. I think there's a huge movement with LEED, And I think today it's kind of, it's I wouldn't say it's gone away, but it's kind of, at a point where it needs to be re-energized, right? And I think that's the thing that I am seeing that's coming, is that I think as a GC, we will be more, we need to get more proactive about starting to capture some of those metrics when it comes to carbon footprint, it comes to construction waste, things like that, that I think will be more prevalent coming up fairly quickly. We just don't have, I think, as solutions in the industry, many out there that, that serves that purpose. We are working with one, thanks to KP and his incubator program, that I think is, heading in the right direction, and I'm fully supporting it like Hathaware to see if we can get there and get in front of it. But yeah, that's coming, KP, where I think that's going to become more prevalent and kind of start to get prioritized higher.
Yeah, I have all the best founders, don't I?
Yeah. No, so far so good. I think I'm pretty happy.
Go further.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned simulation and you talked a lot about 3D assets. It's ironic that in this industry, it is a 3D industry that has basically kind of crammed all the visualization into 2D for decades, and are now starting to recognize that those 3D assets, have touch points throughout the process. What do you think are some of the drivers that are going to allow large companies to take that step back, look at end-to-end, from design all the way through to the kind of building lifecycle management? Those 3D assets are incredibly valuable through the process.
Yes.
But to your point, who has time? So what are going to be some of the drivers you think that will start to, bring this into the fold as the standard?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this question, and it may touch on an area of controversy, which I think KP is not afraid of. So forever, I think within our space, we're leveraging the 3D for everything that we do, right? But contractually, we're still held to the 2D. So it's an interesting kind of gray space where you get these, 2D documents, and that's what you're contractually held to. The 3D space is what we build to, so it's interesting, right? It just makes no sense. So I think that a short answer to your question is that I think it needs to start early, where I think contracts and I think trust needs to be, I think, supported within the 3D content that we're provided. And then that's what we maintain and build on throughout the life cycle of the project. And that's what the owners take at the end of the day, right? Because again, to your point, it's sometimes, well, today it starts in 3D, gets flattened to 2D for contracts. The GC resurrects it in 3D and coordinates everything in 3D. And at the end of the day, we flatten everything again and give it in 2D, right? So think about those inefficiencies and really data loss at that point. So it's no one's fault, but I think the industry has to get together and kind of figure out, and that's how we start. But because again, if we're starting the way we are today, I don't think we're ever going to get there as far as the efficiency gains that we need.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Ty. I was at a large architecture firm, and the CEO was telling me, I have this millennial working for me, and they just sent the BIM to the structural engineer. They didn't get them to sign a waiver thing or any of that. They just shared it with them. And these millennials are just too collaborative. Like they just trust everyone, and they're just way too open about everything. And I was like, I hear you, but maybe that's a good thing. Like maybe it's not like, I think we grew up in the generation of combativeness, right? Like, I've got to issue an RFI, or I just zoom and say, hey, what did you mean right here in this section? Like, what are you doing here? Like, I need help here. Versus let me issue an RFI and let me track and CYA and, I'm building a file against you for a change order. Like, I think we might have a generation coming through that's less interested in that and just wants to get their job done and hey, here's the model. Tell me what's wrong here.
No, KP, you're absolutely right. Because, they're asking why. Why am I doing this, right? I think for a lot of us, because we've been in this kind of, I think, in this process for so long, we just kind of shrug our shoulders and move forward with it. But I think there's something refreshing about that is, asking the why. And, that's something that, it touches on. We have a summit every year for Hensel Phelps, and I bring all the VDC resources in one location, and we talk about these things. And the big challenge for us is really challenging everything that we do and asking the why. There's everything that we've done, I think, has been kind of centric on kind of old means and methods for a long time. I think with these innovations that we bring in, you also need to challenge really the processes and truly understand the process is really set up to succeed in this environment where we're bringing in these technologies to improve the, for improvement, or is it still kind of centric on Excel spreadsheets and printed sheets, right? It's just that philosophy needs to be challenged. So that's a great point, Kate.
So we are, well, and I think that part of the mechanism is that there are going to be trust, sort of digital trust, right? That's kind of coming. That's once we get past this an unbelievable hype cycle of the metaverse and NFTs and all of that nonsense, that actually the true value of what actually blockchain can bring, and these trust mechanisms will start to take that out of the conversation. And I also think that it's going to allow for, smart contracts. I think triggering payments is going to be probably one of the big drivers, because if you tie a payment to completion of a particular moment in time on a smart contract, verifiable through the 3D assets and maybe a LiDAR scan that gets matched up, all of that can actually be automated. But if you say that to people, they look at you like you're from outer space. But I'm gathering that these are some things that you're looking at. But how do you even have that conversation to someone who doesn't understand the underlying technologies?
No, it's KP. You want to start there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem sometimes, right? Our passion for the vision of technology gives us the inability to communicate to people. Like, people don't care about the technology, right? The end customer does not care about I've had so many companies. We have a couple investments, quote unquote, in blockchain. And I tell them, never say blockchain ever again. Like, never say it to don't show up to a contractor and talk about blockchain. One, they're not that interested in that, but talk about, like, do you want to get paid faster? Do you want better quality? And talk about all the benefits. And unfortunately, I think it does ourselves a disservice a lot of times, around talking about the tech and not talking about, like, the benefits of it. And unfortunately, the people most passionate about tech want to talk about tech, right? They want to talk about, I mean, you can quiz a room full of people in our industry. They probably don't know the difference between blockchain and crypto. No. You say blockchain, they're like, Bitcoin, I heard it's a scam. Yeah. So don't bring it up, and I think there's work to be done. The good news is our industry, there's so many, like, segments where you can start applying the technology that you don't have to do it all at once. So
I agree. I think the why is important, right? I think, I think within the construction space, and KP spot on. I think when I hear blockchain and crypto, I'm I'm calling my friends and it's millennials, right? And they're like, mining. And I'm like, all right, what's this all about? But, to your point, I think, and even, in the last decade of how I brought technology within Hensel Phelps, and really, the first time I brought, the HoloLens in, everyone's like, whoa, what are you going to do? Watch movies with that, right? It's the why behind, it's starting to validate and getting them comfortable with really the reason behind the technologies, right? It's everything that KP said there. It's for schedule, it's for budget, it's for safety, all the key components of really what keeps this machine running in the field, right? And what's important, getting materials there on time, getting submittals reviewed faster, making quick decisions when there's a change coming with the design. Those are the things that I think the why behind, I think changing this environment for sure.
Yeah, I think Roee started by saying, when he first met with KP, he's like, I don't have a deck, I don't have any projections. I'm just going to show you the tech. And I think, and certainly with immersive technology, which is kind of where I live most of my day, you can't have a conversation with people unless they've actually seen what the technology can do. And it's like, unless you're sort of showcasing what it means to them on a day-to-day basis, it's really hard for them to formulate an opinion. And I think you're right, KP, they don't care. we're Silicon Valley and we care, but no one else does.
And I think that the technology has to permeate their personal lives. It's been interesting. I had a vice chairman of a multi-billion-dollar company. 4 years ago, I sent him a Zoom link. He literally called me up and cursed at me. He's like, why can't you send a damn conference bridge like everyone else does? What is this Zoom thing? Like, you're killing me here. Like, just follow, like, this, use AT&T teleconferencing. What's wrong with you, right? And I'm like, okay. And so I did that. Last year, he's like, hey, let's do a Zoom. I'm like, what just happened? Right? What just happened? And he's like, oh no, that's what I do now. Like I talk to my grandkids via Zoom and I use Zoom for this and Zoom. I'm like, what happened to you? And the reality was in his work life, it wasn't important enough. He was used to, but in his personal life, and now it permeated his personal life, right? So if you start playing with Oculus in your personal life and the same person is like meditating, using it or whatever, they start to pattern out like, oh, here's how I could use it at work. And, you know, right now Zoom exists on just about every machine on the planet, you know, because you have children on it and you have old people on it. And the old people are because they're talking to their grandkids, right? So I think some of this technology has permeated our personal lives well enough that now we start to question, like in our work life, do I need to go to the job site to inspect something, or can the superintendent FaceTime me and show me what's going on?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think, and it's, and we always also talk about the killer app. It's really not the killer app. It's really killer utility. It's like, how am I going to use this? Why? And when does it become seamless for me to do so? Like, I don't know if, you know, I remember having to have a work phone and my personal phone until smartphones came out. And then it was like, we became so proficient at this app culture that then it was really easy. And then security protocols improved. So of course that Big Brother could like lock down portions of our phones. But, you know, I feel like that's sort of the same path that it's going to take, especially with immersive technology, with the wearables starting to hit the market. Because I think the wearables are going to have a tremendous impact and efficiency on, you know, every aspect of, you know, the life cycle. But it's gonna be, you know, to KP's point, like when we're using it to get directions or, you know, to see some cool artwork on the side of a building in Manhattan when we go to visit, like, you know, it's going to take that utility for us to draw the line.
Mm-hmm. And I think that your point on wearables, I don't want to like, I don't want you knowing where I will not share my location with people. That is just not culturally how I think. My kids, they share their location with their buddy. I'm like, you want people to know where you are? They're like, Dad, it's more efficient.
Yeah.
It's more efficient for me to be transparent. I'm like, nobody gets to know where I am. Like, that's just how that is, right? And so you think about the culture of wearables. If you're going to put wearables on a job site, Ty, like, what's that person thinking? Right? Oh, you're tracking me.
No, absolutely. And we've had some pilots already where that exact thing was really front facing, where, you know, you want me to wear another device, you want me to wear another watch, you want me to charge something else, no, you're not putting anything on my phone, right? So yes, it's very guarded, right? And so it's, you know, the value is there in terms of, you know, the safety side of things. And if there's a emergency on site, we can track exactly who's on site and who's still on site when we do our evacuation. So there's value in that understanding, like when someone's climbing up the tower crane, what is their heart rate saying that day? You know, are they not feeling where they should be? So we can kind of mitigate that, you know, potential risk. So there's value there, but to everything KP says, it's culturally having to get through that whole tracking into your personal space, you know, and having those, you know, that criteria or that service level agreement that says, no, you leave that device at site when you're, you know, leave the site, and then, you know, we won't track you off site, right? So that's potential there.
They don't believe that you're not going to track them.
I know. I know. It's a funny story because like I travel a lot and very, you know, I think as fast as we move between my wife and I, she really knows where I am before I tell her. So I'm in Chicago. She goes, I thought you were in LA, but I checked the app and you're in Chicago. So it's pretty funny that way. And, you know, KP's point and what his son resonated for me is just more efficient.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I share my location just with my kids, and it's funny. My son said, you know, oh, I was looking to see where my brother was. And he goes, and I looked up and he goes, and your little bubble was right on top of mine. And we were literally side by side on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. And he rocked up next to me and he's like waving. I'm like, just focus on the road, please. You're going 85 miles an hour.
But I'm definitely in KP's camp. I don't want people to know where I am exactly, but I find myself going that way.
I'm not going to share my fitness rings with you. I don't need any other pressure about getting my.
Peloton, your Peloton friends. Wow, you really phoned that one in. Yeah. Well, but it's all coming. This sort of transparent living. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. See how it evolves. So Ty, at the end of every show, we ask our guests the same question, and it's about the future, and it's about your future personally. So we've been talking a little bit about technology and our own personal use of it. But if you could project yourself 20, 25 years in the future, and you could have, any technology, whether it's a gadget or just a service that makes, you personally just makes your life better, makes you happy, and it doesn't have to be based in reality. What would it be and what would it do?
It's a great question. I get asked that often. I think for me, and I don't know if it's anything specific, but I think in my life and the things that I look at as far as technologies in my own personal life, it's technologies that just takes away the redundancy of my day to day. I mean, if I have never have to open up another car door when I walk up on it, that's something that I would love, right? In my life today, like, my wife loves turning on all the lights, and I'm okay with that. But at night, and I got to turn all those lights off, having technologies that automatically at 11 p.m. all the lights go off, right? I mean, things like that is amazing to me. Things that I think that I do in my day to day that I don't care less to do ever again. As technologies get better, those are the types of things that I'm always looking for and sourcing. So.
I love that. Well, you can have the light thing that can happen today, and so you shall.
Well, here's a funny story to that. I had my whole house programmed that way, and then sometimes when the connectivity cuts out, everything resets. And we had a blackout one time, and at 2 a.m. The electricity cut out, and it came back at 3 a.m. and every single light in the house came up and woke everybody up. So there's always, there's pros and cons.
We haven't quite cracked that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I'm right there with you. I think let's limit the things that, there are these rote activities that we have to do every day, so we can get back to the, high level, the important stuff.
That's right.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a fantastic episode, and we really appreciate you joining us and sharing all your wisdom.
Amy, thank you for having me. KP, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Good to see you.
Yeah.